The Anticipatory Agent framework. Two architectures, one seam, and the whole argument lives in that seam. On one side, carved wood, something grown, worked, and shaped over time. On the other, a machine grid. Uniform, weightless, flat. This is about what happens where they meet and how to build that meeting honestly. The idea at its center is cognitive sovereignty. We tend to assume that seamless integration follows from technical perfection, lower latency, cleaner interfaces, more parameters. Picture the tidy pipeline: human input, AI processing, task output. That clean pipeline is a first-order fantasy. The problem of integration is structural, not technical. The friction we feel with AI, the fatigue, the disorientation, has a name: sawagi. It is not a bug in the code. It is a symptom of a profound dissonance between two fundamentally different architectures. Real integration doesn't happen in the clean pipeline, it happens in the collision. Consider a single word: attention. In a transformer, attention computes co-relevance, scores over a static corpus, flat statistical sorting. Biological attention is something else entirely. It structures the world into foreground and background by existential significance. What matters? Where the organism can act. One word, two operations. The resemblance is real. The identity is illusory. Lay the two architectures side by side, and the differences run all the way down. Biological cognition selects anticipatorily. The machine correlates retrospectively. The human processing space is hierarchical and layered. The machine's is a flat, uniform token space. The human's information metric is structural, preparedness to act. The machine's is Shannon entropy, statistical surprise. The human is driven by existential stakes and care, the machine by co-occurrence and proximity. One is navigating the unknown. The other is optimizing the known. The human isn't magic, it's constrained, and the constraints are the source of the power. First, exformation. Of the roughly 11 million bits per second we sense, only about 40 reach consciousness. The figures are illustrative, but the ratio is the point. That active discard builds the background against which an anomaly can stand out. Second, valence. Earned salience, the differential weighting of what experience has taught to matter, and because it is earned, it is correctable. Third, affordance and habitus. The trained body is already disposed to act on possibilities shaped by history. Discarding, weighting, disposition. The apparatus the machine lacks. You might object that modern AI is full of constraints, architectural algorithms, user priors, reinforcement learning from human feedback. True, but those are engineered constraints, bolted on from the outside, torqued into place by an engineer. They are not enabling constraints sedimented from lived consequence. The knot the tree grew. Added constraint is not the same as earned constraint. A cage is not a spine. This is the existential orthogonality principle. Computational capability and existential capacity are independent dimensions. Scaling compute will not spontaneously generate agency. Moving right on the horizontal axis does nothing to move up the vertical. The gap that matters is between anticipators and non-anticipators, not between biological and artificial systems. Because current AI does not bear consequences, it does not care. So the human must supply the stakes. Action requires a coherent causal bubble, a forward model defined by two dimensions: resolution, how fine your causal detail is, and horizon, how far your temporal reach extends. Inside it sits the sovereign mind. Deliver AI outputs that exceed the agent's current resolution or horizon, and you don't empower them. You shatter the bubble into sawagi. Detail beyond your resolution is noise wearing the costume of insight. Which brings the constitution problem. Agent state and agent model are structurally isomorphic, the same functional pattern across different levels. So watch what happens over time. Active cognition. The human observes, models, acts. AI interference, fluent hypothesis-shaped outputs begin to substitute for the person's own guessing. Atrophy and dependency. Used as a pure generator, AI swaps experience-weighted judgment for pattern-weighted plausibility, editing the agent the user is becoming and preventing them from ever building the competence to evaluate a guess. The alternative comes from the Oxford tutorial tradition. The second student. Re-architect the relationship. The human provides the anticipatory model, the direction, and the existential stakes. The AI is strictly contained inside the human's causal bubble, acting as an expansive generator of computational friction to test and strengthen the human's hypotheses. Not the oracle, the sparring partner. This turns on a distinction: to provoke versus to evoke. To provoke positions the external stimulus as active and the human as a passive vessel receiving closed answers. To evoke reverses the polarity, the generative capacity stays in the human response, and the machine acts as an enabling constraint, surfacing latent knowledge. It should make you say more than you knew you knew. So, re-architect the interface. The status quo optimizes for raw information transfer, beautiful throughput, zero protection for the forward model. It hands you conclusions. The redesigned interface protects the forward model and hands you back your own thinking. Sharpened. It forces a bubble statement, locking in your operative assumptions before generation. It tracks a surprise register, the discrepancies between expectation and output, and it frames every output as an update. This contradicts your expectation that the same diagnosis holds across domains. In clinical decision support, the status quo delivers accurate but out-of-rhythm alerts that produce alert fatigue. The redesign frames new data at the workflow decision nodes on the diagnostic horizon. In AI research assistance, the status quo locally optimizes drafts and dilutes the project with generic literature. The redesign forces a bubble statement and tracks a surprise register to extend the frontier. In organizational management, the status quo aggregates individual queries and leaves collective divergence unresolved. The redesign maps overlapping causal bubbles and flags destructive versus productive divergence. Which brings us to WA, harmony through structural difference. Observation is a constitutive act. If we let machine statistical mimicry mediate our attention, we shrink the reality we can bring into existence. Attention, in the machine sense, is not all you need. The machine gathers, weighs, and synthesizes, but we abduce, we interpret, we decide. Cognitive sovereignty is the capacity to keep these three. It is ours to defend. And it is what is at risk